at any point too. So we're excited about it. So.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Rob Kiltz and Conversations with Dr. Kiltz. And I'm excited today. Brian Sanders is with us today. And he's going to tell us his story about Sapien, about changing lifestyle, nose to tail eating. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, Brian, and how you got into this space and what about health and wellness and the lifestyle that matters to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I kind of fell into this space. I think people come to this when they're about 30, which is when it happened to me, because it's kind of like, oh, wait, I can't eat whatever I want anymore. You know, it's like that time of your life. And the sad part, though, it was a time far too early that I lost both my parents. So that was like the extra wake-up call. And they thought they were doing the right thing. We were making our food from scratch and not going out to eat a lot and, doing the food pyramid type of stuff. And they just got the chronic diseases that so many people get. And so that was a wake-up call. I realized maybe, these government guidelines weren't all that they're cracked up to be. Maybe the fact that we have 88% of Americans unwell, right? We have metabolically unhealthy, 88% of the population. So, man, I really just started looking at things from scratch. Like, what else is there? I actually found Mark Sisson's book. People probably heard of him. He's great. Primal Blueprint, has a lot of great info. It was a great starting point for me. Kept going, learning, going to conferences, listening to podcasts and lectures, reading books, going into the scientific literature, everything for years. And then basically 4 years ago, I decided to make it my full-time job and make a film about it, because I saw some of these vegan films and it just hurt me. It hurt me to watch these films, because I just changed my life completely by doing the opposite of what they said. I started eating more meat and more fat, and all my problems went away. And I lost a bunch of weight. I lost 3 to 4 pant sizes. All of my little problems kind of went away, like allergies or joint pain or acid reflux type of stuff. Just all went away. And it was so easy. I didn't ever have to count calories. I didn't do anything. I just changed the foods I ate.
All the common diseases that everyone suffers from that somehow are just happen, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. You just think it's normal, right? You just go along. If you just listen to the mainstream sources of health, it's like, oh yeah, of course you have all these things. When you're 30, you get the things I said. Yeah, you have all these little problems, and you that's normal. Then it's like when you're 40, you get on more medications and you have more problems. And you're 50. This is just the playbook, right? This is just what everyone thinks is going to happen. And I realize it's not true at all. Not true at all. And it's just opposite. Yeah.
Well, the inspiration is, so now I didn't start this until I was 55 on carnivore. Before that, it was paleo and Atkins. And I was exercising, and I had all those similar problems: bowel bleeding, arthritis, psoriasis, migraines, kidney stones. And finally, at 55, I went carnivore and 1 meal a day. And now, almost 66, it's been a game change. But what I'm inspired by is the fact you're
38 now,
8 years young, and you've really made it your mission to share this. And tell us a little bit about your blogs and your Sapien nose to tail stuff, and how that is really fueling this lifestyle change.
Well, yeah. So once I just went full in on it, I didn't really have a plan. I had to come up with a plan as I went. And I work with a great doctor, Dr. Gary, who's in LA. So that's Sapien. And we help people use diet and lifestyle to reverse disease, get off medication, all the things you're talking about. No matter what age, we work with people of all ages, races, sizes, everything. And it always seems to work. People say, oh yeah, and it's just genetics. And, well, we're pretty lucky then, because, 100% of people we work with get better, to different degrees. So how are they all just, how is it all genetics? So that's the Sapien side.
Well, how is it, how do you convince, or is it, this idea, do we convince those that don't believe it, or we're really, what you're doing is sharing the success stories because I've been on your blog and really excited to see the people that found a tremendous amount of health and wellness changes for them. What's your focus for inspiring people?
Well, yeah. Well, we do. We do. I do a lot of content to let people know that it's possible. And yes, we can focus on success stories. We can do podcasts, even some with the patients themselves telling their success stories. So yeah, I mean, we're not trying to force this on everyone. We just want people that want this to have us available. And so, I mean, that's the whole mission with the film as well, right? The film is the whole goal is let's get the biggest audience possible to see this so they can just wake up. It's not going to give them all the answers, right? It's just, one film. But if we can reach a ton of people and get them interested and let them know that it's possible, they don't have to just resign themselves to that slow decay that so many people do, right? Just give them that hint. Give them that hint, whether it's through my podcast, through the film, through whatever.
Where do they find your podcasts?
So yeah, Peak Human is on Spotify and all podcast apps, on YouTube, on the Food Lies YouTube channel. So I do everything under Food Lies, basically, right? So if you search for social media, you can find me at Food Lies, and then the podcast is called Peak Human. I got a lot going on because then I have Sapien, which is sort of more the medical side, and then I have Nose to Tail, which you mentioned, which is the food side. So I am trying to attack this from all angles, right? I think that's the big goal, is make this a revolution worldwide, make this a lifestyle, make this a movement where we give education and tools and whatever resources people need to make these changes. So yeah, the Nose to Tail thing would be on the regenerative agriculture side. It's, what to actually eat, how to get it to you. And, so we have nosetotail.org, and we have regenerative ranchers that do things the best way possible. They're here in Texas using all the holistic management practices. And we can talk about regenerative ag later, but it's kind of the solution, right, to a lot of these problems. Is how do we raise animals well, morally, ethically? How do we get them the most nutrient dense possible for our bodies, for the meat and the fat? How do they heal the land along with it, improve the soil health? It's basically wins all around.
So it's a global sustainability. And I was actually on your website, your blog, and watching some of that about the sustainable farming, which really is so incredible to listen and watch the stories. What would you put as sort of the food lies? Where do you have a hierarchy of food lies in all of this? Where would you put?
I kind of do. I kind of do, because there's so much going on. But when I start people on the simplest path, it's letting them know the biggest food lie is that red meat is bad for you and that saturated fat is bad for you, right? So if you start there, and then we can unravel as we go. So that is the biggest lie that's been perpetuated for decades, right? Every decade, it seems like the powers that be have a new boogeyman for why red meat is bad, right? It was like 60s and 70s. It was like, oh, it's the environmental stuff. And then it turned into, before that was the heart attack stuff. That actually is in the film. It goes back to the 50s when President Eisenhower had a heart attack and they were trying to blame saturated fat. Then skipping ahead to the 80s, 90s, it was cancer, It's like, oh, meat causes cancer. And it's like, there's no evidence that it causes cancer. There's evidence that eating a bunch of processed foods and, sugar and vegetable oils will cause these problems. And then meat kind of just gets lumped in with that. So the high level view is that red meat is a health food. It's something that humans have eaten for all of history. It's what helped us become human. I just interviewed Dr. Bill Schindler for the third time, archaeologist, anthropologist, food scientist, studies all of this stuff and tells the story of how getting access to animals, especially first access when we developed hunting techniques to get to the organs and the fat and the blood and all these nutritious bits and pieces first before the predators got to it. That's how we became human. That's how we got giant brains. That's how our entire bodies changed. Our digestive systems changed because we got access to this highly nutritious food. People don't understand that meat is the most nutrient dense food. you can eat, like, animal foods are on a different level than plant foods. I don't really have a big problem with plant foods. I have a problem with processed foods mainly. And there are some plant foods, many plant foods that you have to detoxify and cook properly and prepare properly to get a lot of the anti-nutrients out of them. But I don't necessarily have a huge problem with plant foods in general. It's just that they're on a different level than meat, animal foods.
So the number one is that meat is harmful, which it isn't, and it probably
Biggest food lie. Meat is harmful. Biggest food lie.
And it's this, the sapien is we became that because of our hunting methods, and agriculture didn't come for quite some time, I imagine, in all of this. And so tell us a little bit about regenerative farming in how you're seeing it in those farms in Texas.
Yeah, and I've seen it around the world. We're going around the world filming this, and basically, I was just thinking about this, how backwards it is, how society works, and how these big government institutions and big organizations work. Is they're worried about the environment, right? We all should be worried about the environment, but their solution, they're saying meat is bad for the environment, so you should eat a whole bunch of processed plant foods, right? And then they're really skipping the solution. That's how I know it's bogus. That's how I know there's money involved, there's other agendas involved. Because if you're really worried about the environment and you're worried about people's health, you would put all their effort, all these big organizations and governments and all these things could put all their effort into regenerative agriculture. That's how we used to raise animals. We didn't have all these inputs. We didn't stick chickens in a warehouse 1 million at a time. There's warehouses with 1 million chickens in it. They're so big and they're so bad. And then you grow all this food separately, then you truck it in and give it to them. That's not how you do it. You have chickens running around in the farm, and you don't even need to feed them. They can just peck and get all the bugs and worms and all this other stuff that just leftovers. So that's the solution. The solution is regenerative ag, which is growing plants and animals together, which is using holistic management techniques to move, ruminants, cattle or sheep around, and they can, they don't need outside inputs. You don't need to grow food elsewhere and bring it into them, right? So that you don't have to have extra inputs. So I'll go back a second. So when they're talking about the environment, how to feed the world, how to be healthy, and they're telling you meat is bad, there's too many resources, we just should eat plants. That's the main message out there, right? It's like the Eat Lancet, even there's a planetary diet. I was just looking at this, Eat Lancet, right? It's this whole thing. And it's planetary diet. They want you to eat 14 grams of meat per day. They have more sugar than all the meats combined. They want you to eat, I just looked it up, 120 calories of added sugar, not just fruit, sugar from fruit and stuff. 120 calories of added sugar, and I calculated up, and meat, pork, red meat, white meat, pork, and fish, it was about 120 calories. They wanted you to eat the same amount of added. It's insane. So this is how I know it's bogus, because I get their argument. They're saying that our current industrial system of growing a whole bunch of pigs in a warehouse and a whole bunch of chickens in a warehouse is bad. So the solution is go back to the way we used to do it. Even 100 years ago, we used to have pigs and chickens and cows roaming around on pasture, and there wasn't outside inputs. We didn't have all this infrastructure to even ship a lot of these things in. You just raise the animals properly. Then you don't have the outside inputs. Then there isn't this huge environmental toll. There's actually a benefit to the environment, because you help the soil, you keep the manure on the soil, you keep the animals on the soil. So instead of
all the added fertilizer and the added things back to the soil, which is taken away because of the agriculture that happens just in one place, and feeding people just plants.
So you're splitting it up. So we split up agriculture, and we did monocropped plants, and we cleared the fields, kill a bunch of animals, use a bunch of pesticides and herbicides, use all these synthetic fertilizers. Then over here, we try to grow the animals in a big warehouse. And then we have to grow all these extra plants to feed the animals. And then all the manure that could have helped grow the plants is just running off into rivers and screwing up everything else, and it's not used properly. It's so simple. And this is how it's always been. You grow animals and plants together, all their manure, beyond just their manure. There's so many other ways, even just a cow biting the grass and stimulating it and having their saliva drip down, and having chickens like stomp around in the manure and break up the soil and put it into the soil. There's all these things that work that improve the soil health and bring life back to the land. And instead we've split them up, and it's insane. So this is, I'll say it one more time. So the solution is to go back to the way we used to do it, grow plants and animals together. Animal foods are healthy. This is basic science. We could go into all the bogus studies that people try to use to show that it's not good, but we know that for all of history we've been eating animal foods and it's fine. And so we try to tell people that, or these organizations just say, don't eat the plants. I mean, don't eat the animals, just eat the plants, because they have a less of environmental impact, which doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
We have a couple of questions today, and we're in the fertility space mostly, and so it's interesting. I had a number of patients I spoke to today, which they don't eat meat. They don't eat especially red meat, and they eat a tremendous amount of plants. And how do we get someone to go from what they're so used to not eating to get back into that? Because our brains are so brainwashed by that story of the master marketing that meat's bad, that vegetables are so good for us. I asked the question, what would you do for the thing that's so important to you, which is reproduction of a baby? But ultimately, health and wellness is really the thing that we should be striving for, because if you're healthy and well, then your reproduction is there, and all the disease that you've talked about earlier go away. So how do we entice people to sort of get back to that meat-based lifestyle?
That's a very good question, and something I think about a lot. I actually know a lot of other fertility doctors that use animal-based diets, and it's like a light switch. They have a lot of patients that are on these plant-based diets that can't conceive. They get them on the meat, it comes back. They're pregnant. It's amazing. Many stories, anecdotes, all kinds of stuff going on there, and it all makes sense too. So okay, I guess the answer to the question is, people need to know the correct information, so that you have to undo the propaganda. I think that's the number one way, because people have your brain is kind of crazy, where if you could tell your patient that it's okay, but they're still like, oh, I don't know, but for 30 years I've been told that it's bad, and there's this one guy, I don't know about Dr. Rob over here. So you have to undo it, and so you have to have many sources. It takes time. And that's why we're doing the film, to get all the sources, get all the studies, get all the information possible. Then your brain can change. But I still come across people, they say, yeah, but I don't like meat. And I say, are you sure? Because I think you've been conditioned to not like meat. And a lot of women are. They tell me it's like they're afraid of getting fat. They're afraid of all that they've heard for so long, and they just think they don't like meat. But when it comes down to it, they're like, okay, what would be your favorite like cheat meal if you could do it? They're like, oh, a cheeseburger or something. Like, yeah, that's a big hunk of red meat. So I know you do like meat, but you're telling yourself you don't like meat.
It's the stories that we tell and the inspiration of the success stories from those that have followed this lifestyle change that I think is real important. And that's why I think your blog is good, because you have those success stories that are really critical. And the more and more that it's on social media, the more it's a new family now, right? Let's see, I live with one other person. It's not a big family anymore. Everyone's spread out. We're not back to that small farm, that small community. So this is our community today. And so when Julia and Lauren, Liz Mary, and Urbana are here together, they're listening and learning from what you have to share, and what others can say, hey, I did this and it worked. And that's that amazing story. And
That's
so
part of it.
tell us how to inspire them through your Lies movie, and how can we get people to get over there, because you need some help to get that out, don't you?
Well, yeah, it's been a struggle, and this is supposed to be, well, this is the ultimate inspirational story and educational. It is, we're putting it all in one, actually. This is why I would need to make a film. You could do all kinds of podcasts, you can write blogs, you can share little videos of success stories, but it needs to kind of be put together into one. And so, yeah, well, to go to this, it's foodlies.org. We're still on Indiegogo, so you can help. You can link out through foodlies.org and still contribute, because we're still, none of the money goes to me. We're just paying for all the animators and all the people to do their specialties. But yeah, we're including stories, just very amazing stories of people changing their lives. So it's woven throughout all of our information we're getting across, and we're going through, the history of humans, and we're going through regenerative ag, and we're going through all the bogus science, but we also do tell those stories. We have a woman whose mom and grandma were obese and diabetic. She's obese and diabetic. She was going to tell her daughter, her young daughter, guess what? You're going to be obese and diabetic. It runs in her family. Then she changed everything. She went carnivore. This was a couple years ago. She, 11 months, she dropped half her body weight from 280 to 140. She looks like a different person. People don't recognize her at all. They think the pictures are fake because she looks so different. Completely turned it around. Then got her mom on board, got the whole family on board, and now it's a completely different story. Now they're just like, oh, wait a second. No, we don't have to have type 2 diabetes, and we don't have to be obese. Completely changed the game, and now this daughter is set up for success.
So what you're sharing on your Sapien story, your blog, Nose to Tail, and in your Food Lies, is ultimately humans are a hunting animal, an occasional gathering animal, not a grazing animal. And through the lies that we've been taught over the last 10,000 years or so, and certainly over the last 100 years, through the marketing masters of the 10%, they've taught the 90% to be grazing animals when they're lionesses and lions. And your story of dropping 100 pounds, which is remarkable, by simply going carnivore, which is the original nutritional solution for human beings, which are sapiens.
That's it. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I love that. The difference between a grazing animal and a hunter. And it makes sense that, well, 10,000 years ago, we'll call it 10,000 years, when agriculture started, it kind of like, we didn't know any better. It was just like, oh, well, yeah, why not try this? Like, we'll just grow a bunch of grains and we can store them. And well, guess what? That's actually when power structures start to develop, because now one person can own on the land and they can own all the big storage facilities for the grain. And then that's when we rose, or we had pharaohs and kings, and they rose to power because of that. And so that same system is still perpetuated to this day. Like you were saying, the 10% of, these big food companies, all these big interests are perpetuating that same system. And it makes sense, right? It's like, why wouldn't they? They're just trying to make money. But then it's great that there's this small group of people like you, like all the people I know these days, they see through it now. So that they realize, I don't need to be a part of this grazing system. I get it. And if you just, it's like a 1-by-1 type of thing, right? If you do it yourself, you see for yourself, then you can't unsee it. You're like, oh, wait a second. All I have to do is do the opposite of what they told me. I feel amazing. My problems went away. I lost weight. This is how being a human should feel. And then you're forever out of that system. And then it's just people like us are trying to wake people up.
So you don't call it a diet, you call it a lifestyle. And I have my opinion on that, but tell me why you call it a lifestyle and not focus on diet.
Well, diet is just a terrible word in general. Diet implies that it's short term. Diet implies that it's, yeah, I mean, these days it implies it's supposed to be for weight loss. Diet implies it's restrictive. Diet has a lot of these implications, and that's pretty much the opposite of what you want to do. What you want to do is do something for life. You want to do something you enjoy, and you want to do, well, you just want to live like a human. And so that's why it is a lifestyle. And there's different versions. That's also why I don't have any hard and strict rules about I call the sapien diet. It's not carnivore, it's not keto, it's not paleo. It's, it's kind of like this big amorphous lifestyle that brings all
Mhm.
of those things into play. And we can use different of those tools at different times, right? And then yes, we can go carnivore and we can help do things. Maybe we do this for 3 months or 6 months, and if someone has these autoimmune issues or they have these certain things, and we can use that. But really, you don't have to think of it like, well, I'm on a carnivore diet and then I like ate a berry and now I'm off the diet. That's not how you need to look at it. You just say, I just wish there was a better word than diet, because I'd call it the sapient. Well, we do call it the sapient lifestyle. We try not to call it the sapient diet, but it's like, it's not a diet, because carnivore is just part of that. And then it's like, okay, well, now we've healed and we're on to the next step. And this is just your new lifestyle. It's like, okay, now we will have some berries. We will have some, whatever fruit, or we can have some other foods. This is not like we're off the team. This is just part of being a human.
So it's okay, I say, to reward yourself from time to time. Never cheat.
Never cheat.
Always reward. And we all deserve rewards from time to time, but if you do it all the time, then it's deadly. And that's what we've been inspired to do by our modern nutritional experts. And I like to call it a nutritional solution, or the optimal human lifestyle, which is we are Homo sapiens, and it's back to our ancient roots that you're sharing in all of this. Do you talk about fasting and how many meals a day at all? What's your thoughts on that, and how do you inspire people, and when to eat, how much often to eat, those sort of things?
Yeah, I love it. I'll start with Michael Pollan's thing. If people know, his thing was like, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. It's like so bogus. The answer, I think, is eat real food. I like to just put real in there. Let's eat whole food, not too often, mostly animals, right? So I think everyone's eating too many times a day. Everyone's eating. This is screwing up a lot of things. At least people know this by now. People have heard of intermittent fasting, right? I just consider it normal. Like, I don't consider, only eating for 8 hours a day or eating twice a day. I don't consider that fasting. I consider that what humans should be doing, right? You should not be just eating from when you wake up until you go to bed. I think it's very natural. And I've seen it firsthand. I went to Africa in February and spent time with hunter-gatherers, spent time with the Hadza and the Maasai in Tanzania,
Mhm.
and some other groups in Uganda. And yeah, obviously they don't have a refrigerator. They don't, you know what I mean? They eat when they have food, and then they don't eat for a while. And this seems like a foreign concept to people. But like I said, luckily people are hearing about intermittent fasting, right? That is more well known now. And yeah, I think it's normal. I think 2 meals a day is fantastic. I think some people could do 1 meal a day. It just depends. Yeah, I mean, there's all these different factors. There's individual preferences, there's individual goals. But really, between 1 and 2 meals a day is great. Maybe if you're in a growth mode, you can do 3 if you're like eating correctly and you're a weightlifter, maybe, or if you're pregnant. But there's all different ways to do it. So yeah.
I recommend to pregnant women to eat 1 meal a day, 1 snack. Fasting, feasting. Because what you want to do is keep your glucose levels in your gut down. That keeps your glucose levels way down, your insulin levels down. And so ultimately, we're fasters, and then we intermittently feasted.
Yep.
So intermittent feasting is the real word we should be using, I think, but we're so used to intermittently fasting. But we should fast, because you're right. We didn't have a cupboard or a refrigerator in our ancient past, and so if you found that tree with fresh sweet fruit, what did you do with it right then and there? You ate it all.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, it wasn't going to be there tomorrow. And if you didn't get fat, you were dead.
Yeah.
And I would say the get fat gene is the best genetics ever created. And fat is not the cause of any disease. It's our 3 to 6 small plant-based meals a day and low-fat diet, as you mentioned. And so I'm always amazed because when women are pregnant, and Fenke talks a lot about this and others, that basically when you're pregnant, you want to be fat when you start pregnancy so that you can fast and keep your glucose levels low. That's the healthiest thing for a baby growing, which is kind of not what nutritional science teaches, which is the false food lie that we've all been taught in this world. And so, I always say, if so many women, men, they say I'm healthy, and yet they're seeing me for a problem. And I'm sure they're seeing your team for a problem and the Sapien Health team.
Yeah.
That ultimately they must not be eating a healthy diet because they have a problem. And I always say diet is the cause of the need for drugs, dissections, and doctors. And if you change it from a diet to a Sapien lifestyle, that seems like the Ferrari fuel. It's something that would help so many people. A couple of questions is, can you eat carnivore while pregnant? I'm going to say yes, but there was another one on Sapien and maybe carnivore about cholesterol. What are your thoughts on cholesterol and your
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, cholesterol is one of the big food lies. We don't have it right. I mean, some of it kind of makes sense. We didn't have all the instrumentation back in the day. A lot of this stuff is like 70-year-old science and we just didn't have all the answers back then, right? So I kind of get it. I also kind of get that the pharmaceutical companies and the food companies are just kind of perpetuating this stuff. But really, cholesterol is a lot. Well, I've interviewed a lot of great doctors about this, and cholesterol is not what we think. I actually am a fan of the triglyceride to HDL ratio way more than trying to look at, well, what's my LDL? Is my LDL too high? Well, what if you look at your triglyceride to HDL ratio, that really tells you about your insulin and your blood sugar status. And if you have HDL is a good. If you have a good high HDL and you have low triglycerides, therefore you'd have a very low triglyceride to HDL ratio, you would be very healthy, in my opinion. Everyone that we put on this Sapien lifestyle, they go to this. They get their triglyceride to HDL ratio down near 1-to-1, which is what you want. And sometimes,
Can consumers, clients, patients from all over the country and the world join the Sapien Health group and get counseling and advice and directions into their Sapien lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. There's sapienprogram.com, or we just go to sapien.org. But we do have like a 12-week class that everyone can do. And absolutely, because there's more to it. You can't learn about all this cholesterol stuff in one little live stream. But yeah, absolutely.
Lies, damn lies, statistics, science,
Food pyramid,
and data. And because let's see, the Sapiens didn't go to a doctor to get data to determine whether or not they're healthy and well. One of the things that I always talk about, and everyone wants a drug, a test, a lab value to say whether you're healthy or not. And I think maybe the cholesterol science, is too complicated. If it's complicated, maybe it's not true. That's kind of the way I sort of look at all this data that we've developed in our health and wellness world of medicine. Maybe there's something different. Ken Berry, by the way, is a really good one to look at. I don't know if you've interviewed Ken. Mm-hmm. You must. Yeah, I know you've got Sean Baker and many others. But it's simplicity, Occam's razor. And Sapien all of your stuff that I've looked at, it's a very simple concept and idea, but we all need to rewrite the hard drive, because this hard drive is so messed up with 3 to 6 meals a day. Vegetables are good, red meat is bad. And so to hear it, it just boggles the mind.
It is hard to deprogram yourself, and it is hard. And I do believe in that simplicity. I believe, well, I've seen it. Like I said, in Africa, they didn't have the doctors. They're not doing cholesterol tests. They don't have dentists. They have perfect teeth. How do they have perfect teeth? Well, they had great nutrition. And that's actually how you get good teeth. It's actually come from the inside, and you have fat soluble vitamins from animal foods that make your teeth strong. And well, yeah, and they're not eating Snickers bars and all that too. But it should be simple. It should be how you feel. It could be hard to completely go off how you feel, because some people go vegan and they claim they feel better. But that's just for the short term, right? It's like they just cut out a bunch.
Makes you feel better too, and it comes from a plant. Remember that.
What's that?
All
Cocaine?
Stimulants and all hallucinogenics that make you feel good come from plants. And we're meant to get a feel good from a plant because it provides sugar that gets us fat. But that was only a very short amount of time in our ancient past, because again, fresh fruits and vegetables didn't exist in any extent.
No, they weren't. Yeah, I'm doing that part of the film right now, trying to tell people. People have this idea because they go to the Whole Foods grocery store or whatever, and they see 1,000 plants and they're all there sitting for them. This is nowhere near reality. And again, I saw it in Africa. I went in, it was a rainy season. This was supposed to be this abundant time. There were no plants to eat. I guess some people got a few berries that I was with. I didn't see that. They got meat. They were going after animals. And this is small, scattered, seasonal. You can think of the 3 S's. Back in the day, fruit was really small, not very sugary at all. The plant foods they're scattered. It wasn't like an orchard, just sitting there with thousands of apples or anything. And it was seasonal. It was only at certain times of the year. So you have to and even the mustard plants. So all the plants that people eat, the cruciferous vegetables, like the main green vegetables people eat, kale, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. These were all based off this wild mustard plant, this tiny little shrubby little thing with like a few leaves, right? And then we cultivated them. And so we haven't had these for long at all. So it's like you're not going to get your source of nutrition from this tiny little mustard plant that had a few leaves on it. Maybe you could throw it in your stew or eat it with your meat, or maybe use it as an herbal remedy or something. But this is not where humans were getting the bulk of their nutrition from.
Well, for however million years, and I don't know how long we've been and when we changed, et cetera. But if you look at dogs and cats, they didn't exist in the forms that we see them today a million years ago. We bred them to be what they are today. Just like all the food in the supermarket that is super marketed to us, that makes us super messed up. And then it requires a doctor with a drug and a dissection to help us eliminate the disease. But ultimately, you're right. So we hunted, and my bet is even in Africa, the environment of the large herds are gone. And so at one point, when there were far fewer humans, there were plenty more roaming animals for us to hunt. But now that we've created this vegetable diet, which we've shipped all the grains around the world, we've been able to increase the populations because we've increased the calories, which ultimately is the conundrum in global warming. It's not the cows. It's the crops that we feed the humans with that builds our huge societies that makes it so unsustainable. So how do we get back? Because I grew up in LA back in the 50s and 60s. And I remember we would go to the dairy farm in some places, and they were there still in parts of LA and out in the valleys. So what do we do in these big cities when it comes to sustainability, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think about this a lot as well because I think it is a solution. The solution is going back to the old ways. Regenerative agriculture is basically an old system that we used to use to grow food. So we have so much land, right? You're talking about all this land. We just use it in the wrong way. So really, all that this big solution is just changing how we use the land. So it's like, yes, we can live in cities. It's probably not ideal. I think a lot of people are moving out of the cities. Is great. I moved to Austin, and I'm trying to move even further outside Austin to just be more part of the the land and raising animals and building our own community. Really, but we have enough land to support people, support cities, I guess, if we use the land properly. So I forget, I think it might be like 1 billion acres in the US. I should know this number of how many acres we have to use at our disposal. And instead of using it for corn, wheat, and soy, and instead of the government subsidizing it and all that type of stuff, we can grow animals on it. We can do, or mix farms. We can do it. There's nothing preventing us. I mean, it's not going to be quick to change, and there's a lot of people working against us doing it, right? Bill Gates is buying up the land to make his fake food or whatever he's doing. But it's theoretically very possible, right? If we have these hundreds of millions of acres, we can use them to grow animals, right? And then it won't be a problem because they're on grass. When animals are on grass, they're not causing the same problems they are when they're in a feedlot.
And there are so many small farms out there that you can support. And my bet is even in the city, there are areas that people could do small farming and agriculture that's sustainable for them. Chickens and other. I saw rabbits in one of your blogs. There was a couple that were raising cattle and chickens.
Yep. And meat rabbits.
Rabbits.
Yeah, meat rabbits used to be a thing. People, it's a very sustainable source of meat. Actually, it's just we just think it's weird, but it's not weird. It's just we think it's weird. It's just a story, right? It's just like kind of propaganda of some sort. But no, you're correct. So I used to live in LA up until recently. There were farmers markets every couple miles. I went to a lot of them. Like I lived in West LA near Venice Beach. There was one in Santa Monica. There was one in Mar Vista. There was one. They're everywhere. Like every few miles, there's a farmers market. So all these farmers all around California, they just drive in, and they sell their food. It's happening. You just got to find it. You got to make a point to do it.
My refrigerator pretty much. This is my refrigerator. This is my recommended. I'm going to change this word and get rid of the word diet, by the way, if I can get over there.
Lifestyle.
It's lifestyle. It's the fertile nutritional solution that we're talking about now. But bacon, eggs, butter, beef, ice cream, and salt. I say eliminate fruit, fiber, vegetables, seeds, and nuts. This is the healthiest thing you can eat. I recommend one time a day at night, and carnivore is the most sustainable thing that you can ever do. And as you were talking about the ancient nutritional recommendations, or I should say the nutritional recommendations by modern science eliminates these things. And it's plant-based. And the cost of healthcare is going up. The cost of drugs is going up. And I think it's not sustainable for our human race. And so I can't remember the last time I talked to a patient that wasn't on an anti-anxiety, anti-GERD, anti-hypertensive, anti-cholesterol, and anti-diabetic. They're on all these drugs. And what you're sharing in Sapiens is like the lifestyle, or the Ken Berry kind of shared this, the optimal human diet. I call it the optimal nutritional solution for humans, but I think I'm going to add Sapiens to that. Thank you. But that's really so important. Anything? Someone's asking, Desiree's asking about kosher meats. I think that's certainly absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say I don't need to limit myself to kosher meats, but if that's part of your religion or part of what you want to do, it's absolutely fantastic.
And I recommend carnivore while pregnant, by the way. And I don't recommend exercise. I recommend creativity in motion. Because hunters and gatherers, I'm imagining you didn't notice that they were running all the time after their prey. They walked and they created. They made their clothing, their baskets, and all their devices. Any comments about sort of our marketing and merchandising world we live in, and how that is also sort of taking us down the rabbit hole?
Well, that is a whole discussion. Well, okay, I'll stick with the exercise stuff. I think there's been a huge marketing campaign for the wrong type of exercise, or everyone's trying to like join a gym or do this jogging type of stuff. I'm totally against jogging. I think it's for the birds. I think it's a joke. I would never jog. I would walk or I will sprint. I will not jog. I will not use a treadmill. I will not use a whatever little elliptical machine. I sprint or I walk. And this is what our ancestors did. They would climb up a rock. And I did this with them. Again, I did this with them. They would scramble up a rock. So they do a fast walk. We went on the hunt. It was like 8 hours. They kept going without us. We had to turn back. We couldn't make it. We didn't have enough water either. It was crazy. One guy almost passed out and just didn't make it. It was crazy. So
did they have a canteen with them and plastic bottles of water?
They did not. They did not have any of that. They require very little water actually. So they just go out. They do this fast walk, and they do that for like 8 hours. And they'll scramble up rocks. They'll scramble up mountains. Other times they'll practice their bow and arrow. They'll play. Right? Do it. Creative. Like you're saying, they'll do creative play type of things. They'll just do whatever. They're not going to the gym. But yes, in modern times, I do enjoy throwing around some dumbbells. I enjoy functional movements, right? Like if you can use like a kettlebell or just, I mean, the more functional, the better. Like I've done like pull-ups in a tree, it's just like, all right, well, let's just do some pull-ups in a tree because that's all I have. And that is, yes, I agree with you there. I've never been to a workout class before or any of these little Orange Theory things or whatever the hell they are. I'm not into that stuff.
Sarah Franklin, we're on Instagram a little bit too here, by the way, and but it's interesting about sorry about that about we overeat because we're recommended to have 3 to 6 meals a day. We overdrink. It doesn't matter what it is, too many times a day. Mm-hmm. We over-exercise, and we overdo everything, right? That's, I think, what you're saying when you were walking in Africa is there wasn't a need to do.
Life should be simple. Yeah, I mean, it's all a big marketing scheme if you want to think of it that way. Everything is about consumption. I guess that's kind of what you're alluding to earlier too, right? Like, what is this whole thing we've got ourselves into? This whole like hamster wheel thing of buying stuff, of marketing, of thinking we need more, of doing more. People overeat, and then they try to go on a treadmill to like counteract the overeating. Like everything is crazy, and then they'll pay for this gym membership to have access to the treadmill, so that they could try. It doesn't work, but they try to burn off the calories on the treadmill. It's insane. And I don't know. The people that I know that are healthy have a simple life. They eat simple foods. They eat animal-based diets and, enjoy simple, delicious foods. And they don't buy a lot of things, and they don't do marathons, and they don't join like, crazy memberships and stuff like that. They just live like humans.
So what you talk about is simplicity, and sapiens ultimately lived a much simpler life.
100%.
You moved out of LA?
That's exactly why I got out of LA, and I'm here in Austin. There's a bunch of people in here that believe in the same thing as me. They do the same thing, they live a simple life. It's very satisfying. Yeah, and again, in Africa, the Hadza, they're basically on a big vacation. Their whole life is a vacation. Like, what do people do when they go on vacation? They go hang out with each other by a fire, or in a community setting, and sing and dance and play. Right? It's just different versions of that. What's a music festival? You getting together, sing, dance, whatever. This is what they did every day. They just hang out by the fire, play music, talk to each other, go out, hunt for a little while, come back. It's very, very simple.
What's your thoughts on alcohol and what are your thoughts on alcohol? What do you recommend people on about alcohol?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's just the less, the better, right? The less, the better. If you can not drink at all, that would be best. But if people do enjoy social occasions, I'm very not a fan at all about drinking every night. This whole thing, like, oh, I have 1 to 2 glasses of wine. I think that's terrible. If you want to go out once a week and enjoy something with social occasion, I partake in that. It's not ideal. But I would do it. I would do it.
Time.
Yes,
That's what you're
very
saying.
from time to time, and then yes, I would. You do small amounts, and you do it with soda water. You know what I mean? Have like the cleanest source. But ideally, just don't do it.
And I remind everyone that if you look at every toxic chemical that human beings ingest, between alcohol, heroin, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, even caffeine can be excessive, but these are all drugs that come from plants. And there is no toxic chemical that comes from a cow. And so I think I saw this somewhere in your blogs, that plants ultimately want to be alive, and so do cows. You have to eat something that was alive in order to be alive, because you can't just breathe air and drink water to do that. We're going to be finishing up in a couple of minutes here, Brian. Any things that you want to make sure you get to tell those out there that are looking at Sapien or a healthier lifestyle?
Yeah, well, I guess I can kind of recap here a little bit and see what I have, any like kind of thoughts to put it all together. I use a phrase called eat densely, move intensely, which I like. I like keeping it simple. And so eat densely, move intensely means eat nutrient dense foods and then move intensely, right? And that would be like, yeah, just sprints, or like pick up a rock, or like climb a tree. And eat densely would be animal foods, mainly, which have the most nutrient dense nutrition, most bioavailable and nutrient dense nutrition in them. So it's funny because that my eat densely, move intensely, it's the opposite kind of eat less, move more, right? I think eat less, move more is stupid. It's meaningless. It doesn't work, right? It's just like this meaningless statement. And I guess I just encourage people to re-educate themselves.
Where can we find you? Or where can people sort of get more of what you have to share with the world?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of Instagram and social media under Food Lies. So if you just search for Food Lies on whatever platform you use, I'm there. YouTube as well. And then Peak Human podcast. I put a lot of my best content out as podcasts. So yeah.
Because you have a tremendous number of really important people in the health and wellness space that you've talked to. And I think ultimately, by listening to those stories, it's all about those stories. It's around the campfire, right? We need to be getting the stories and listening to others to inspire our change. And once you listen to the stories and you see those that have had the change, I love the video part personally, because I was always that's why I like the picture books. I got my keto's about pictures, and
Nice.
That's the part that I think we need as much as anything. So you've got some really good content. When do you so in helping get your Food Lies production moving, do you have a rollout date yet, or where's that at?
Yeah, well, we're hoping. So we're working with a great distribution company that supposedly that will get it on Netflix and we'll get it around the world, but that won't be until next summer or this coming summer. So yeah, I mean, if the more, more people contribute, pre-order it, and there's other perks you can get on foodlives.org when you click to the Indiegogo. The more, the better, the faster we can go, and the higher quality we can make it.
So we can find you on nosetotale.org
Mm-hmm.
and Instagram on at foodlives.
Yep.
About that, and also at Eat Nose to Tail. I think there's Eat Nose to Tail, and there's
That's
Nose
the
to Tail.
Instagram and face. Yeah.
But
Yeah,
all we
so
need to do is Google Brian Sanders on Sapien, and that's the best way to get the best advice on a lifestyle for health and wellness that is infinite years old, is it not?
It is. What is old is new. We figured it out all along.
So each of us needs to find out what feels right and works right. But ultimately, the last I looked, we're more like a lion than a pig or a cow or a sheep. And we want to shine like the star of the lion. And that's the best way. So Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Rob Kiltz and Kiltz's conversations, and mostly keto and carnivore, but it's about improving your fertile life. So God bless to everyone. Thanks, Brian.
Awesome. Thank you.